It was 07:10 a.m., but the Nevada heat was already crawling across the sand like something alive. Fort McAllister's East Range was active, filled with murmurs, scope checks, and the low clatter of gear against aluminum benches. 40 competitors moved through prep stations with the sharp, confident rhythm of seasoned shooters. Most were former Special Operations or Marine Scout snipers, easy to spot by the relaxed posture and the 1,000-yard stare that didn't blink. A few wore precision shooting team patches, spotless uniforms, names already known on the circuit. The moment she stepped onto the gravel, silence peeled off in layers. A woman in a plain gray shirt, black utility pants, and no visible rank walked across the lot with a long rifle case in one hand and nothing else. She didn't glance sideways, didn't acknowledge the glances, the way eyebrows lifted at her lack of a spotting partner or the weathered sedan she'd parked just past the checkpoint. She opened the case beside a row of tripods and polished stainless barrels. The rifle inside was unmistakable. A custom-painted AXMC, crimson red from buttstock to muzzle brake. Someone near the bleachers chuckled. One of the Army guys from Fort Bragg leaned in and muttered loud enough for others to hear. Did she think this was a parade? Another voice, this one from a guy with a scoped .338 and 3 deployment patches on his vest, snorted. Maybe she lost a bet. Heads turned. Smirks widened. The woman didn't flinch. She locked the bipod into place, adjusted the cheek rest, then slid the bolt assembly forward with smooth, practiced ease. Her fingers checked the windage dial on the Schmidt & Bender scope without hesitation. No range card, no clipboard. Just the small, waterproof notebook she slid beneath the mat. Her body moved like she'd done this in silence 1,000 times before. The range control officer, a lean man with a captain's tab and a coffee-stained clipboard, called her number, Shooter 49, first to fire. She walked to the platform with the same quiet focus she used to unpack. Spotters raised their binos. Others leaned forward just a little. The red rifle caught the morning sun, throwing a strange glow off the barrel. At 1,000 meters, the steel silhouette shimmered faintly. The wind was low. Conditions ideal. She lay prone, aligned her frame, took 3 shallow breaths, then 1 slow inhale, half exhale. Her finger settled on the trigger. The crack of the shot cut through the range. Half a second later, the ping echoed back, clean and unmistakable. Dead center. Nobody spoke. A few jaws stayed open. The man who joked about the paint job stood still, mouth twitching into something closer to a frown. The woman reloaded with a click, didn't look around, didn't celebrate. Just reached forward and tapped the front of her scope with 2 fingers. A motion more ritual than adjustment. They didn't know her name yet, but the red rifle had just spoken first. At 08:20 a.m., the range had grown quieter. Not because the noise stopped, but because people were listening differently now. Rachel Donovan had already nailed her first 2 targets, and the murmurs had shifted from mockery to curiosity. At the 1,800-meter mark, the challenge started separating competitors from contenders. Mirage shimmered off the desert floor, and the wind flags near the buttes began to twitch unevenly. Several shooters missed or clipped the edges. Rachel didn't blink. She settled onto the mat again, set her rear bag, and shifted slightly on the stock. Her breathing followed a sequence no one recognized. 5 shallow inhales, 1 long draw, then a still pause where her entire body went static. It wasn't how they were taught in sniper school. It looked clinical, like someone executing a script. The shot cracked out of her rifle like a whip. A full second passed before the steel rang. Dead center. Paul Garrison lowered his spotting scope. He'd seen rookies get lucky. This wasn't luck. Her recoil control was minimal. Recovery instant. Eyes never leaving the reticle. He'd fired in combat zones across 3 continents, trained with Marine recon, and taught sniper classes for reservists. He had never seen anyone breathe like that. Her chest barely moved. But the rhythm was precise, intentional. At 2,700 meters, she adjusted elevation 3.4 mils, windage 1.2 left. She double-checked barometric readings, corrected for spin drift, and scribbled a quick notation in her notebook. Then she fired again. Hit center. No celebration. Just a casual flick of her bolt, and a slow exhale, like nothing happened. Garrison clenched his jaw. He hit the same target minutes later, but he felt the eyes on her. Not him. By 09:05 a.m., the 3,800-meter line was set. Distance like that brought every variable into play: crosswinds, density, altitude, even Earth's rotation. Rachel lay down without a word. Her setup looked identical, but spotters noted she dropped her bipod height slightly and shifted her rear bag half an inch. She repeated her strange breathing, then squeezed off the shot. The delay was longer now, just over a second. Then came the metallic ping. Hit. Again. Someone behind Garrison muttered under their breath. That's not technique. That's something else. Garrison didn't respond. He was already thinking the same thing. At 09:45 a.m., Paul Garrison sat alone behind the bleachers, phone screen dimmed to low brightness, thumb scrolling with increasing frustration. He'd searched every open-source database available to him. No shooting records, no competition results, no confirmed unit matches for a Rachel Donovan under the Air Force registry. He tried service awards, deployment logs, even cross-referenced call signs. Nothing. It wasn't just that she was unknown. It was that she didn't exist. Behind him, the wind kicked sand across the range. Some of the spotters were still watching her, not just for her shooting, but for the way she moved. One leaned toward another, voice low but clear. That's Helios breathing. The other squinted. That's not even real. The first shook his head. I heard whispers in Kandahar. Nobody taught it. You either knew it or you didn't. Garrison heard it all. He didn't interrupt. He just watched Rachel from across the benches, arms folded. She was sitting beside her gear, alone, flipping through a waterproof notebook like she was checking grocery lists. But the pages were filled edge to edge with equations: spin drift, Coriolis effect, wind vectors in nonlinear crossflow. Not military issue tables, hand-calculated, rechecked, notations in margin code he didn't recognize. Across the spine of the notebook, there was a strip of dark tape, a name barely visible in faded Sharpie: S. Donovan. She adjusted the strap across her chest. A pendant slipped out from under her collar, red glass, cut like a drop of flame. It caught the morning light for half a second before she tucked it away without thought. Garrison couldn't look away. Everything about her was deliberate, but unforced, measured, rehearsed in a way that didn't come from training manuals. His instincts, sharpened by years in combat and command, were screaming now. She's not just skilled, she's something else. At 10:30 a.m., the clouds over Fort McAllister cracked open without warning. A high-pressure system rolling off the ridge collided with desert heat, and the flags along the range began to whip sideways. The final round was called 5,900 meters, last qualifying shot. Few expected anyone to hit it. Most hadn't even trained for it. Rachel didn't hesitate. She lay prone, made a small bipod adjustment, then pulled her notebook close, shielding it from the wind. Her pencil scribbled something fast. Pressure dropped. Wind gusted from 10 to 17 knots, north-northeast. Her mouth moved, whispering calculations no one could hear. Her breathing slowed, the strange rhythm returning. Then the rifle cracked. Seconds passed. More than one. At that distance, time felt like rope being pulled tight. Then it came, a low, solid ping off the center steel plate. Spotters froze. One stammered before calling it center mass. Confirmed. The bleachers went dead silent. The laughter, the scoffing, the bets, it all vanished in a heartbeat. Paul Garrison stepped forward, his voice low but cutting. I want her rifle inspected. That shot's not clean. Major Brooks, the range officer, didn't argue. He motioned to the techs. 2 uniformed armorers rolled in, gloved and methodical. They broke down the AXMC piece by piece. No electronics, no smart optics. The trigger group was mil-spec, tuned but legal. The barrel showed normal wear. When they were done, one tech shook his head. It's just precision. Nothing illegal. Rachel was already reassembling the bolt when Paul spoke again. Who built it? She didn't look up. My sister did. She painted it red. Then she slid the bolt forward, locked it in place, and looked back toward the line. That's when a new voice broke the silence. It carried even through the rising wind. General Whitaker stepped out from the command tent, arms behind his back. His tone was formal. The long-range event is complete. However, verification protocol remains. We will proceed to the SOCOC round. Final distance 6,200 meters. Real-time dynamic movement. No safe benches. No wind holds. The crowd murmured again, but this time with unease. Everyone had heard of the SOCOC test. Few had seen it. Fewer had passed it. Rachel simply nodded, as if she'd known it was coming. At 11:05 a.m., the range was reduced to chaos. Wind hammered down in sheets. Flags whipped so hard they tore at the edges. Rain angled in from the west, slicing visibility. But the SOCOC timer kept running. Rachel moved like the storm didn't touch her. Her transitions were fluid. From one station to the next, she stayed low, shoulders relaxed, muzzle always level. The crimson AXMC barked at each target without hesitation. 4 down, then 5. Each shot timed between gusts. She didn't wait for the storm to ease. She shot through it. The final post sat wide open, exposed, the longest stretch yet. 6,200 meters to the last plate. A second too early, and the wind would lift the round clean off course. Too late, and the window would close. Rachel adjusted elevation, nudged her scope half a click, then ran her thumb across the red pendant once. The rifle cracked. There was a full 2 seconds of silence. Then, distant and unmistakable, the steel rang, dead center. The crowd didn't cheer. Not at first. It was too much. Too far. Too clean. The storm pulled harder across the valley, and in that wind, her jacket fluttered open. For a moment, a tattoo showed on her left forearm, wings outstretched over a burning sun. Paul saw it from the line and froze. He knew that mark. He had heard it whispered during night shifts in Helmand, back when entire forward teams vanished and no one explained why. He didn't say a word. General Whitaker stepped forward from the command tent, his expression unreadable. The storm rolled behind him, thunder chasing over the ridge. He waited until Rachel stood upright, slung the rifle, and turned toward the field. Then he spoke. Assessment complete. Status confirmed. Major Donovan, resume operational posture. It was the first time her true rank had been spoken aloud. Paul blinked hard. Realization landing slow and final. The woman with the red rifle hadn't come here to win. She came to be seen. Every shot, every silence, every breath, it was all part of the reveal. Not a challenge, a confirmation. Project Helios wasn't a rumor. It was standing right in front of him. At 12:20 p.m., just as the range crews began packing gear, a runner burst through the operations tent, soaked from rain, headset crooked around his neck. General Whitaker turned before the man reached him. Status. The runner saluted once, short and sharp. Guardian team pinned near the northeast slope of Alaska's Raven Ridge. 2 wounded. One confirmed to be Lieutenant Daniel Donovan. Whitaker's jaw set. Rachel was already moving. She didn't ask questions. She didn't speak. She handed her rifle case to a tech and walked straight for the briefing trailer. Paul followed without being told. The mission wasn't an offer. It was an order wrapped in silence. Inside, Red lights cast shadows across a table covered in laminated maps and real-time satellite imagery. Terrain data showed sharp elevation changes, broken visibility, and wind vectors climbing past 30 knots. The C-130 Hercules waiting on the tarmac was already warmed up, modified for low signature insertion. The aircraft had side-mounted gear racks, sealed for extreme cold, and was painted in flat Arctic gray. Inside, racks of modular weather sensors, thermal optics, and communications override kits hung from shock-proof latches. Rachel checked each item herself, her movements exact and quiet. She selected a lightweight modular ghillie cloak, then opened her rifle case and ran her hand across the red finish once before locking the bolt forward. Paul stepped in, already geared. His voice was low. "How bad is it?" Rachel didn't look up. Extraction window is under 90 seconds. Hostile movement on ridgeline. "We're going in cold." Her tone wasn't clipped. It was controlled, focused. The kind of voice that knew exactly what needed to be done and didn't have room for fear. By 12:50 p.m., the ramp closed and the C-130 roared down the runway. The cargo bay lights dimmed to amber. Rachel secured her pendant inside her vest, then clipped in and sat back against the bulkhead. Paul didn't speak. He watched her instead, trying to understand how someone that calm could also carry that much weight. The aircraft hit turbulence 30 minutes out. The storm had already swallowed the upper range. Ahead of them, the Guardian team was still alive, but barely. Intel showed enemy foot patrols closing fast and visibility dropping by the minute. Cold weather rifles were staged in storage crates near the ramp. Modified suppressors, optics already zeroed for sub-zero conditions. Rachel reviewed the ridge overlay one last time. Wind direction, slope angles, predicted movement. Her voice cut through the cabin. "We drop behind the ice crest. 2 firing positions. Primary elevation 1240 meters. My brother's pinned on the southern shelf. I'll take the cave entrance. You cover the perimeter team." Paul nodded. He didn't ask why she wasn't rattled. He already knew. For Rachel Donovan, this wasn't just another mission. It was personal, but it was also something more. It was duty. And for the first time, he understood that the calm wasn't lack of emotion. It was discipline, honed, past, breaking. At 14:10 p.m., the snowcat dropped them half a click shy of the ridge, engines muffled by the wind howling off the glacier shelf. From there, it was a 40-minute climb on crampons and silence. Rachel moved first, cloak drawn tight, pack compact, rifle slung across her back like a lifeline. Paul followed, teeth clenched against the cold. Every breath burned sharp in the lungs. The temperature had dropped below -20 Fahrenheit, and the wind kept shifting in gusts that punched through their layered gear. By 14:55 p.m., they were prone on overwatch, concealed beneath a narrow rock ledge lined with crusted snow. Rachel adjusted her angle first, laying her rifle across a stabilized mount built from a carbon tripod with a clawed anchor base. She opened her weather kit with one gloved hand, eyes flicking to the anemometer and pressure gauge. Wind at 16 knots. Drop shifting at angle 7. Temperature steady, but humidity rising fast. Paul checked optics. He found the cave entrance at 6,450 meters. 6 figures, all armed, casually smoking and watching the ridgeline below. 2 more stood farther off, pacing, marked as patrol leads. He glanced at Rachel. She was already scribbling fast into her notebook, lips moving as she whispered numbers. No wind holds, no spotter, just instinct and math. Her scope clicked 3 times left, half up, and she nodded once without looking. "We're live in 10 seconds, she said. "I'll call execute. You take the patrol leaders. I clear the mouth." Paul chambered around into his suppressed 300 Norma. Breathing slowed, finger off trigger. He counted each heartbeat. At the 10, Rachel closed her eyes, touched the red pendant inside her collar, then snapped back into position. Her rifle barely shifted as she settled in. "Execute," 2 shots rang out, almost layered. Paul's first round took the lead patrol through the temple. The second severed the other's spine mid-step. Rachel's rifle followed immediately, barking 6 times with surgical rhythm. Her bolt cycled fast but smooth, like it was wired to her breath. The first 2 guards dropped before they could react. The third turned to shout and fell backward. The last 3 reached for weapons, but none made it to cover. Not one round missed. The echo rolled down the slope and faded. Nothing moved. Paul stayed on scope. No return fire, no radio chatter, just silence. "Targets neutralized," Rachel said calmly. "Area secure for extraction." The storm didn't let up, but in that moment, the mountain itself seemed to pause. At 15:35 p.m., the Chinook flared low over the extraction point, rotors fighting the crosswind as it hovered just above the plateau. Snow swirled into chaos beneath the downwash. Guardian Team medics moved fast, hauling the wounded toward the ramp. Through her scope, Rachel stayed locked in until the very last man cleared the ice. Her brother was limping, left arm in a makeshift sling, blood soaked through the sleeve. But he was upright, alert, still moving. Before stepping inside, he paused at the threshold. He turned his head slowly, scanning the ridgeline like he already knew she was watching. He raised his good hand in a half salute, 2 fingers to his brow, then to the sky. Rachel didn't move, didn't wave back. She simply whispered, so low the wind swallowed it. "We kept the promise. Sophie." By 17:05 p.m., they were back at forward base. The sun was setting over the range, casting long shadows across the temporary tents and snow-packed canvas. The cold cut through everything, but inside the debriefing station, it was warm and still. General Whitaker stood with a tablet in one hand and a blank expression on his face. He looked at Paul first. 5 for 5 in storm conditions. 2 confirmed KIA. No wasted rounds. "You want in?" He didn't say what. He didn't need to. Paul didn't answer right away. He looked toward Rachel, who was kneeling near the equipment rack, breaking down her rifle with calm care. There was nothing performative in it. No show. Just ritual. He nodded once. Quiet. Grateful. Whitaker turned and walked out, his boots crunching frost into the metal floor. The room cleared. Rachel finished cleaning the bolt and slid it into place. The crimson AXMC sat beside its case, scarred now from ice, grit, and heat. She stared at it for a moment, hand resting flat on the cheek weld. The paint had started to wear at the edges. Bits of silver peeked through where the sling had rubbed raw, but the red still held. She closed the case slowly, clicked both latches, and ran her fingertips once across the top, like you'd brush snow from a name on stone. Then she stood, cloak over one shoulder, rifle slung tight. It wasn't a celebration. It wasn't relief. It was a kind of release. The mission was over. Her brother was alive. The shot had held, and the vow they made, years ago on a wooden bench in the sun, had been honored. Without a word, she turned toward the hangar. Her shadow stretched long across the ice. At 06:40 a.m., the C-130 rose into the gray Alaskan dawn, tires lifting from the snow-packed field with a muted groan. Inside, the cabin rattled gently, not from turbulence, but from the cold, settling into the metal. Paul sat across from Rachel, gear strapped down, everything in place. No one else spoke. There didn't need to be words. He waited until the altitude stabilized and the roar of the engines turned to steady background noise. Then he asked the question that had followed him since the first day on the range. "Why red?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She looked out the small porthole, watching the mountains slide slowly beneath them, their peaks sharp and still wrapped in shadow. Then she turned back, voice soft and level. "Because we don't forget." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Paul watched her eyes, clear and dry, and knew the rest of it wasn't about paint. It wasn't about standing out. It was about the names that don't get mentioned. the ones buried with closed caskets, the ones remembered only by the silence they left behind. Red was a reminder, a signal, not to others, but to herself. "It means we remember the cost," she said finally. "The promise. The people who don't come back." Her hand drifted to the pendant resting against her chest. It caught a sliver of sunrise from the window. Not polished, not ornate, just glass and weight. A sister's design, a sister's farewell. Paul leaned back into the cargo strap, eyes following the slow curl of vapor off the snowbanks far below. He thought about every time he'd seen that rifle, every breath Rachel had taken before a shot, every movement measured, every choice deliberate. Nothing was ever for show. Not the silence, not the breathing, not the red. As the aircraft banked west, the mountain range behind them slowly vanished into cloud, but the weight of what they'd done remained. He looked at her one last time and understood. It was never about how far she could shoot. It was always about how far she would go.